The GOP is scrambling in the wake of Trump's train wreck of a meeting Friday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Today, House Speaker Mike Johnson had a new line of attack on Meet the Press.
Something has to change. Either he needs to come to his senses and come back to the table in gratitude, or someone else needs to lead the country to do that.
In other words, he believes Zelensky should resign if he does not follow Trump's lead. Funny how he struck such a different tone towards Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I'd like to see Putin defeated, frankly. He is an adversary of the United States. But in this conflict, we've got to bring an end to this war. It's in everybody's interest.
Johnson wants Putin defeated, not out of office like he wants Zelensky, because apparently getting mad at the guy bombing your country is a step too far. And Speaker Johnson isn't the only one who has been pushing this. Take, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham, one of Zelensky's earliest and loudest cheerleaders, now calling on him to step down as well. And then there's the man who escorted the Ukrainian president out of the White House after the meeting, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. He told CNN that Zelensky was the one not negotiating in good faith. Again, this from the same guy who once compared Zelensky to Winston Churchill. Not every Republican is on board with this, and plenty of Democrats are furious over how all of this went down. And the one person who should be handling all of this, the Secretary of State, America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, well, he is the guy who just sat there, grimacing in his chair, observing from afar as this whole mess unfolded, melting into the couch. On ABC News today, Rubio said he's had no communication with Zelensky since Friday, adding that, quote, "You cannot end a war unless both sides come to the table." Trump's team is trying to spin this like Zelensky doesn't want a solution, or at least isn't putting in the work. But as the political drama here plays out, Zelensky has shown quite the opposite. In fact, he flew straight to Europe after the fallout, actually doing the work, finding solutions, and engaging in real diplomacy with his European counterparts. There's a bigger question hanging over all of this. Can Ukraine achieve peace without the United States? Sure, there are technically options, and Ukraine has enough in its defense fund to slow Russia down for now. But it's a long shot in the long run. Alliances and foreign policy have been built around U.S. involvement for years. Trying to go it alone now wouldn't just be difficult for Ukraine. Some argue it would be nearly impossible. The U.K. did announce a new $2 billion deal to fund Ukraine's air defense missiles, and multiple countries did commit to establishing a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. But take a listen to what the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said.
The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
America's biggest, strongest ally now pleading for the United States to simply be reliable. And believe it or not, they want that help to fight a dictator. With me now, Amicia Cross, Democratic strategist and campaign advisor to former President Barack Obama, and Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project. He's also the author of Running Against the Devil, a plot to save America from Trump and Democrats from themselves. It's great to have both of you with us. Rick, let me start with what we just learned moments ago on the national security front before we even get to Ukraine. But a truly bizarre development coming out of the Pentagon. We learned that the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, has stopped all cyber operations against Russia. The Washington Post is reporting that their motive is to bring Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table with Zelensky. And I'm curious what you think about this development. How dangerous is this generally? And does something like this even help a fair deal? Because I'm willing to bet that I do not think the folks in Moscow are making a decision to stop any of their cyber operations against the United States.
Quite clearly, since there's still the ongoing Russian they've substituted being a strong nation for having a strong external cyber capacity in a lot of these questions. But look, I think that this is treason adjacent. You do not unilaterally disarm against the Russians. This is 101 stuff. This isn't hard to understand. This is stuff that for those of us who were in that last generation of young Cold Warriors, we get it internally. It used to be a fundamental principle of Republicans that you didn't disarm unilaterally. You didn't let dictators run wild. You didn't let someone like Vladimir Putin have an open battlefield where you've disarmed yourself. So, look, I'm sure Pete Hegseth is very busy firing black people and women. So he's not focused on the actual target here, which is Vladimir Putin, which is one of our only peer enemies in the world.
Let me get your thoughts on that as well really quickly, Rick. I mean, the reaction from the international community and how they're viewing Trump versus Zelensky. You've got European allies quickly rallying and siding with Zelensky today in this kind of impromptu security meeting that they organized. He met, even symbolically important, with King Charles of the UK. How well did Zelensky handle the aftermath versus how Trump did?
Look, I think Zelensky's handled the aftermath beautifully. I also think he handled the meeting as well as anyone could. It was a setup. It was a prank that Trump and Vance and Rubio set up. And by the way, I don't give Rubio a pass. He had to be involved in this. There's no question that he knew what was coming, and he sat there looking guilty, watching his soul wither away live on television. But these people knew what they were getting into, and they're not pursuing American interests. They're pursuing Putin's interests.
Amisha, Zelensky said he believes he can salvage his relationship with the U.S., and we know that any plans from Europe need U.S. backing. The question is Donald Trump here. Donald Trump has made clear that he's not prepared to, and even Mike Johnson reiterated that today to some extent, that they're not prepared to bring him back to the White House or into the diplomatic fold until he, I guess, apologizes, shows gratitude to the United States. I don't know in what term that exactly looks like, but also basically bend a knee to Donald Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump wants to see Vladimir Zelensky grovel. He wants to see him beg. He wants to see him be apologetic, but he also wants to hear a shouting down of thank yous to him personally, not to the United States, not to our longstanding foreign policy, not to our, relationships that have existed across Europe for quite some time. He wants to hear it from him. And even if he was to do it, I don't think that would change the animus that Trump has. He kept screaming during that meeting, you don't have the cards, you don't have the cards. Well, guess what? Trump doesn't either. He gave his whole deck over to Vladimir Putin willingly. So at this point, it is one of those things where you have to, in terms of what we're seeing with Zelensky, he has to have a certain amount of faith in the United States in the same way that we saw UK's prime minister speak to that, not completely abandoning the fact that the U.S. has stood proudly by its European allies for generations. But on that same token, they know that they have a clown in office here. They know that they have someone who doesn't care what he looks like on the world stage. And they know that they have someone who, to Rick's point, pulled a bait. That's all that conversation was. He played it for an American audience primarily because Trump wanted to seem like he was strong-arming. He wanted to take people for a ride in the American public who aren't necessarily as cued into the history of what has been happening with Ukraine, what has been happening with Putin. I will give it to Zelensky. He did the best he could with the hand he had been dealt, and he went down that history because it's not just Trump. There were problems associated with the lack of interventionism across 3 presidential administrations, and that's how we got to where we are now. But in no uncertain terms can the United States afford to back away, because should they do so, we will see what is the equivalent of World War III. Putin will not stop. He will go through Ukraine, he will capture it, and he will continue on and try to rebuild Mother Russia. That has always been his goal.
Let's talk about the Republicans for a minute, Amisha. I mean, a lot of Republicans are contradicting themselves when it comes to Zelensky now. Among the most notable, Lindsey Graham, Mike Waltz, and so on, even Marco Rubio to some extent. Some are saying things like not another penny or America first, but the irony is that Zelensky seemed poised to sign the mineral deal that would have actually given America what Trump was asking for. And a huge reason Trump seems mad is because of Zelensky's rightful bashing of Vladimir Putin. He just simply, and the Republicans just don't want him bashing Vladimir Putin, the guy that is invading Ukraine and killing Ukrainians every day. They seem to be upset that Zelensky doesn't want to be nice in his language and in his terminology against Vladimir Putin.
And the reason why is because Donald Trump envisions himself having the same type of leadership that Putin has over his own country. And he also is still very much butthurt, for lack of a better term, over all of the instigations of and the proof that was found that Russia interfered in the 2016 election cycle. So there is a frustration that Donald Trump has and he will never let go of. That has absolutely nothing to do with Zelensky or the crimes that are being committed against his country by Putin right now. And thousands of people, the hundreds of thousands of people that are dying regularly. Trump doesn't care because he fashions himself as a dictator. He wants to have state-based media. He wants to have a population that cannot speak against the government ever or at any time. He wants to be able to decide from the bench of the White House what matters and what doesn't, and he wants to eradicate our system of checks and balances. There is something to Donald Trump wanting to uphold dictators. It is because he also wants to see them remain in power abroad and to strengthen him here. He does not believe in democracy here, and he doesn't believe in it in Europe either.
Rick, there are some, Democrats, perhaps from the James Carville school, who think the Democrats should kind of sit back, let the Republicans own this, let them break it. They will definitely own it. Some say that is too grave of a risk when it comes to something like Ukraine. What do you think the Democrats should be doing right now? Do they have any levers of power that they can use to try? I mean, Ukraine, support for Ukraine used to be bipartisan just a few years ago. Now it's fully, it seems like it's a partisan issue with most Republicans, if not all, totally following Donald Trump's lead on this. What can Democrats do, if anything?
Well, look, the Democrats can shut it down. And this is what they need to start thinking about. They think of things in this sort of serial way, one issue, then another issue, then another issue. They need to do what Mitch McConnell would do if he was in the minority with the opposing party right now. Shut it down. Don't give Mike Johnson a deal on anything. Don't give John Thune a deal on anything. Freeze everything. Hold every other appointment. Stop every process. Tell them that this is unacceptable. And it's not just about Ukraine. It's about the entire destructive character of Trump's administration. And the Democrats need to show America not that they're going to have better policies. They need to show them that they have some fight. And these people will not stop fighting. They will always, and the problem with James's theory, and I love James, but the problem with this theory is that the Republicans have a goal line. They don't. They will keep going. The shark will eat until you kill it. The shark will keep eating until you stop it from eating anymore. So you got to fight these people on every front. And the Democrats, if Mitch McConnell was Chuck Schumer, he would be absolutely wrecking the hell out of Donald Trump every minute of the day.